Hi, I'm Megan Peters, the community manager at Mashable, and today on stage with me is Katie Rogers from the Washington Post, Anthony DeRosa, social media editor at Reuters, and Drake Martinet, social media editor at All Things D. Today we're going to be talking about the evolving role of social media in news organizations and how it's really affected us as social media managers there. So I'll kick it off with the first question and just let everyone talk a little bit about what social media editor means at your organization and how your newsroom is approaching social media and a little bit about your day-to-day tasks there.
You want me to start off?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Hey, thanks for having all of us. Anyone in the room, who knows what All Things D is? That's good. This is a friendly crowd. Now, All Things D is sort of the small but mighty tech publication associated with the Wall Street Journal. We're autonomous. We work based essentially out of Kara Swisher's living room in San Francisco. And, we work really hard to sort of cover Silicon Valley tech like a blanket. Being a small operation, I think we're 9 editorial side, if there are editorial sides in an organization that big, and another 10 sort of who do business stuff. It means that my job as social media editor is a lot about building systems. In an organization that's small, when you're sort of the only one who's working on social media, the way we've taken it is to try and be leading in terms of product. So great implementations, great things that can sort of draft off the energy of the rest of our staff. So if we're going to have a Twitter implementation, it has to be part of our publishing process. If we're going to do, something with Facebook, we can't ask a lot more work out of everybody because everyone works so close to capacity, and there's not a lot of extra hands. So I would say what I do day to day as somewhere between helping build and design editorial products and also sort of the thing we'll share probably, which is leading social conversations, talking with social companies, and keeping us at least up to speed, I guess.
So at Reuters, the role is kind of similar to what Drake explained and what he does at All Things D. We're a somewhat larger organization, so we have about 3,000 journalists around the world, and we're constantly trying to get more of them involved in these social platforms. And it's evolving, and they're getting more in tuned into seeing what the value is. And part of my job is to not only use social platforms to report and monitor, but show our reporters around the organization how valuable it is for them to use to find out what's going on in their subject area that they cover. And I think the easiest way to really do that for them is to just do something like install TweetDeck on their computer and set up lists in the area of interest that they happen to be reporting about. And they're instantly going to start seeing all these leads and news and information that they didn't even realize was floating around at all times. And it can make them a much better reporter to have all this information. So once they see that, then they really want to not only use it to keep up with what's going on, but engage with the people that are reporting that stuff. They could be other reporters, they could be citizen journalists, or they could just be somebody in the right place at the right time. And it opens up a whole new world for them. So, that's one component of my job. But I also use it myself, and I'm a kind of a generalist when it comes to reporting. And if I see a story that I think is particularly interesting or has a lot of information being generated through social platforms, I'll use that as the genesis for gathering that information, and I'll report it directly on Reuters, and often it'll be in the form of a live blog. And those tend to be when we have some of the biggest stories. So right now it would be the Euro crisis, and we're doing a live blog for that currently. So it's a combination of teaching, reporting, and trying to integrate social throughout the organization.
Hi. The Post is a 700-odd strong newsroom. It's huge. And currently, we actually don't have a social media editor. In the beginning, though, it was Amanda Zamora was the social editor. It started 18 months ago with me as her producer, and it was 2 of us sort of coming out of our early morning digital meeting flying around the newsroom all day long. This is happening on this Twitter list. This is happening on your beat. And it was very much evangelizing every day, kind of going out section to section, person to person, training people, updating. We do have a hand-curated main account for Facebook and Twitter, curating stories that we're breaking in real time. And just sort of as the months progressed, we got more people who were taking on the word social in their job title. And so now we have sort of kind of a fleet of people, section to section, who are managers, who are producers, who are engagement editors. We don't have one person who is the social czar, so to speak. We have people who are very invested section to section. Personally, 2 months ago, I moved to our local section because I love local news, and I took sort of my wide-ranging experience from the whole newsroom to kind of focus to a beat. And Amanda, who is phenomenal, some of you probably know her, she went to our national politics team to be a digital editor. So everything that she did for our newsroom is baked into what she does now. So it's something that is not on its own anymore. It's something that hopefully should be phased in across the newsroom.
Yeah, and I guess for me as community manager at Mashable, that's pretty much how it's been for us, where we're very fortunate to have a team of reporters very socially connected already and very aware of the digital platforms out there. So I guess my focus is less training and more optimization, like what new platforms are out there, should we be there, how can we be there in the best way we can be, looking at metrics, looking at what our readers are saying and seeing if that can be integrated into our content even more. And just kind of overall strategy of looking at like how are these conversations that are happening on the web able to also be a part of Mashable. So my next question, which probably also relates to your day-to-day, is are your projects at work a tough sell, and how do you present them to the powers that be? And could you offer any advice to social media editors who maybe still have to convince others the power of social?
Okay, well, so I think All Things D is unusual in that we're centered around tech, and we have, I'd say, a pretty interesting split of editorial side people. There's definitely some who were born and bred in the area of newspapers, and there's some who are sort of hardcore blogger era 1.0. I'd sort of cite Peter Kafka as a great example of that. He was one of the founders of Silicon Alley Insider. And the sell is different. The first sell is always, I think, to explain the sell, it's like, hey, let's do this thing. You should too. And here's why you should take time out of your day to bother with it. So when you talk to, I sit right between sort of business and working with WSJ and working with the writers all the time. And so on the writer side, it's, this extends the reach of your work. You sort of use, not euphemisms, but sort of different explanations for why this is valuable. I try and stay away from buzzwords like engage. That'll be the last time I say it. And but just it extends the reach of your work. It makes what you do more valuable. It adds inherent value. Or you say, look, if you don't deal with this social stuff, it's basically like an old-time news organization not having any trucks to deliver papers. Because the people who read you are not just your readers, they're your users, they're your distributors. Some of them are your choir, depending upon who they are, especially us. We have some people who are pretty choiry, and that's important. So that's part of the sell on that side. On the business side, it's always, this is innovative, this is possible, and it's not going to cause you any more work. I think that's a big part of it.
We have a really great product team, and I work really closely with them to come up with different ways to integrate social into the editorial that we do. And we're actively working on a lot of really exciting things right now in different sections of the website. So it's not just distribution and getting our readers to help push stories along, but actually looking at what the readers are saying and also the news that's out there on social platforms and figuring out how can we do interesting things without all that information, present it in different ways, doing sentiment analysis, around different candidates and presenting it in an infographic and having a real-time way to tap into that. That's just one example, but there's all these other things that we're working on to present social information in really cool ways. So myself and the product team, Alex Leo, Liesl Kipp, and a bunch of other great folks are really in tuned and understand social media and have a good sense of how that can be built into our editorial platform. So I don't really feel like I have to sell too hard. In fact, it's kind of a reciprocal process. We both have ideas and we bounce them off of each other, and it actually works really well.
That's great.
I think the great thing and sometimes the hazard of working with a lot of really smart people is that it's not a problem to get people to listen to your ideas. The problem is there are so many ideas and so many people. And I think what we've really struggled with and kind of triumphed with, I think, by thinking really hard about how things are done there, we started to designate point people for digital projects, digital producers, and then producers to be the sort of lead in a project to make sure it's done from A to Z. I think one huge example for us, a huge learning moment, was the Palin emails. Tons of news organizations were scrambling to get these emails online and have people come to the site and go through these letters and tell us what was important and what wasn't. Meanwhile, we had a reporting team doing the same thing, and it just kind of it was a success, but what came out of that was sort of, we're past the point of trying to convince our editors to let us do things. We're very much in the space now where we have to really have one person sort of see it through. And so if you guys are social editors out there looking for advice for that kind of thing, I think picking people who, can work with all types of people throughout the newsroom is going to be your smartest choice. I mean, if you pick the wrong person for a project, it's not going to happen.
I would say we all do some translating day to day, sort of across sort of product and journalism and business side. You end up having to explain the same thing multiple times, multiple ways.
Yeah. But I think there's people in all different parts of the organization who have varying degrees of expertise when it comes to social media. I find that, there'll be a couple of good people within our political correspondence, and then over here in our financial section, there's a couple of really good people there. And I kind of look to them to be an evangelist and also a translator for me, because I can't be in all places at all times, and they can really help facilitate a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us too, there's a lot of people always brainstorming, always thinking about, how can we bring our audience into this, and how can this be a conversation across the larger social web? And I think for us, it's like we like you have so many ideas, and sometimes the problem is like, well, who's gonna do this time? And it's a matter of getting everyone on board and really excited about the idea and working hard on it. And it definitely takes a lot of work, but I mean, I feel like those initiatives can be so incredible if you do it right.
Yeah.
So next up, I want to talk a little bit about this role of the social media editor. Some social media editors have said that this job won't exist in 5 years. How has this role changed for you since you started in it, and where do you see it going in the future, the next 5 years, perhaps?
I'll start. I think if we're really successful, the role won't necessarily go away, but it'll evolve into a different type of role. Because the goal is to get as many people in the organization to integrate social media into their jobs and not really have to rely so much on the teaching and the mentoring that we try to do. But that's only really a small component of what our jobs are, I think. And there's also a lot of strategy, longer-term planning about different executions of how we want to integrate social media into our editorial. So I think the evangelizing and the teaching will hopefully be less, because people will really get it, understand it, have it fully integrated into their jobs. But I still think there's a lot of leadership that you need, someone who's going to really own all the social editorial integration, and that will not go away, because it's always evolving, it's always changing, there's always new things.
I think I thought a lot about that, and I think I think it's not the right thing to say that the job won't exist. I think what's probably close to the truth is that as there are more people in leadership positions that can sort of think more specifically and deeply about social within their company, they're going to start to ask themselves a couple of questions. They're going to ask themselves things like, what are my goals in using social media? I mean, that's the first thing that we sort of ask ourselves at All Things D in starting a new project with social. What do we want to get out of this? Is this about connecting with our audience? Is this about sort of reporting something? Is this about branding? I mean, it depends upon what it is and what kind of company you're in. But the job is going to have to, the job that will evolve out of what we do, and I think you're seeing some divergence in the jobs we have now, the job that will evolve out of what we do should be the consequence of what your organization needs. So if you need somebody to do social apps, then you need somebody who knows how to be a product manager. And if you need somebody to create content based around social and sort of think the news thoughts as it relates to that, then you need somebody who knows that pictures taken by iPhones are time indexed all the same, and Twitter is time indexed all the same, and you could overlay them, and you have a great news product. But that's a totally different kind of job, right? And then you've got the entire other job of being community manager, which is really reaching out and connecting with the audience. And if that's something your company needs, your media organization, then you have to hire for that. But they're pretty. I mean, I could not do what Meghan does. I don't have the time, and I don't have the skills. It's not what I'm good at.
That's funny. That was actually going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Like, my role is called community manager. How is that different from
That's a really
social
tough
media
job.
editor?
That's an always on job. I guess
Yeah,
all of
that's
ours
true.
are a little bit, especially you. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say we don't have the luxury of having a community manager. I think a really complete, cohesive media company social media strategy does include a community manager or somebody who essentially fills that role. It could be many people at the desk level. It could be across the organization. There's lots of ways to skin that particular cat. But I think that, wow, that was funny. Man, I'm way off. But I think that, I think there's not a lot of community management in what I do because we just don't have the luxury. Mm-hmm. I'm the only person, myself and some intrepid interns who touch social every day. And, if we could talk to every person who was talking to us, that'd be great. The good news is Kara Swisher does a great job of that on her own. Mm-hmm. So she always is out there being bombastic.
Sometimes she'll yell at me.
Yeah, well, she'll yell at anybody. That means she likes you. Yeah, but I think there's not a lot of community management in what I do. If we were bigger, I think there would be somebody else. But we sort of had to put our legs where they would carry us the farthest. And for us, it's in systems design and sort of like being able to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing really well, really closely.
Okay.
I really agree with you by saying you kind of go where your company needs you to go and filling the spots that way. I think what I said earlier, though, it's already kind of started to happen. Your job isn't being phased out, but people are going to the places where they're going to be most effective. When it was 2 people managing, a branded social account for the entire newsroom, there was literally no way to know who was reading us and who was responding to us on Twitter. There was just too much. And we still have 2 guys, TJ Hortensi and Mark Lucky, who do the curation of our accounts every day. They're awesome. But, having people at the section level on the editorial teams considered journalists, I think that is a huge change, that people with social in their job titles are every bit as much of a journalist as a traditional reporter is. I mean, I would argue that there's no such thing as a traditional reporter anymore. But I think that it changes. It's changed certainly in 18 months. In 5 years, I hope that we're still doing what we need to be doing in those spots. I mean, people are always going to be. It's a A/B conversation now. It's back and forth between readers, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, I mean, the skills that we have in our positions are incredibly valuable. Like, I don't think they could be replaced. I mean, they can definitely be taught to others, but I don't
And they're
think
really
that-
different skills too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're kind of the job title guinea pig, you know. I've got like my job title is like 6 words long, like news blogger, you know, social network manager, whatever. It's just, you go out there and do what you can every day, and know who you're talking to, know who your readers are, know what they're talking about. Most importantly, and you know, your job title is irrelevant if you're effective at your job.
Oh, sorry, please.
I was going to say, I think eventually it won't be social media; it'll just be media.
Yes,
so
I hope so.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't want to have that in my. I didn't want to have social media editor, the social media part in my title, because I'm like, you know, I want us to get over this whole idea that social media is like this thing over here, because it's
Right.
kind of all gonna.
Yeah, it's infiltrating
mesh
everything
together.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even because you think about it, like the comments on your story are still a form of social media. It's not like it's just Twitter and Facebook. It's really
Blogging
across everything.
is
Yeah,
part of
blogging is
social media.
social. Yeah, it's becoming more social with platforms like Tumblr. Even, you know, like your updates on Google Plus and Facebook could consist of practically the same length of a blog post you would do elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry.
Oh, I keep interrupting you.
Well, I was actually going to toot your horn. Well, you mentioned earlier about sort of being a journalist on social and how that's important. And I sort of see journalism a little bit as a religion. It's a lot about what you can't do, and it's a lot about what you have to do in order to be, you know, however you choose to practice journalism is your journalism.
I can say I'm a lapsed journalist.
But what I will say is that, you know, Anthony sort of probably out of all of us up here does the most putting himself out there as a journalist and being sort of socially engaged and doing reporting day in, day out. And that's a very precarious place to be. And I think that it speaks well of Reuters to allow him the freedom to do that. It's a dangerous thing for a lot of companies that have big brands to say, I don't know, this guy has Reuters on his little Twitter profile, and he could say something that's totally awful, and like, you know, it happens. I'm sure you've got all kinds of stories, but you walk it, you know, you
have to walk the line.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
careful.
But just like you can take a picture like a journalist or not like a journalist, you can tweet something like a journalist or not like a journalist. And I think it definitely served me in making sort of products for editorial and helping do social things for editorial. You have to know what journalists would do. Mm-hmm. And what they wouldn't do, and what you shouldn't do to keep some, you know, credibility in your company.
Yeah. I think you have to build trust, and it's really about the body of work that you present. I think a lot of folks have this idea that you can't have any opinions as a journalist, and that's a whole debate that could be another panel.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that next year.
Yeah, next time.
Or a
for
thesis
sure.
assignment.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's probably another thing that you have to try and figure out. Are you going to just do straight reporting? Are you going to give some of your opinions over these social channels? Mm-hmm. You have to be careful about that, and I think credibility and trust plays into that as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the best parts about social media for journalists is that journalists can be people on social media, and other people on social media want to connect with people, not a branded journalist name. And part of being a person and showing personality is having opinions and having thoughts. I mean, we obviously have them. Everyone does. And I mean, it's true. You do have to walk the line and, you know, keep some things close to the vest. But at the same time, I think that it's going to become more and more commonplace that you can feel more comfortable to be who you are as a person, especially overall social media. I mean, for any professional is really making your personal and professional lives converge. I mean, there's much less separation between the two now. And I think the more that happens for journalists, the more that, you know, people are going to become in tune with how they feel about certain issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best example that I can think of for sort of dealing with opinion and conflict in modern day is one of my editors, Kara Swisher, is married to, she'd want me to say she's gay married to a Google executive. They've been gay married like 5 times, and apparently the last one stuck, so, you know, we're hoping. But she's married to a Google executive. And so what does that mean for us?
Yeah.
The Silicon Valley is a small place. It's like, it's a fishbowl. So what do? Well, Kara doesn't write about Google, period. If Kara mentions the word Google in a story, she has something at the top of the story and the bottom of the story and on all of her stories, but called out especially if she mentions the word Google, that, hey, there's this thing. And then it goes into, her whole disclosure is about, our finances are separate, I get no benefit, and, between you and me, she'd love to write all kinds of nasty stories about Google because it's, it's a big company.
Yeah.
And she likes doing that. But, you have these conflicts. So I think the only light of day left is disclosure. And that's, I think we can still stand on that.
Yeah.
I really think we can. I think we have to. That's all we got.
Yeah.
I think it puts context around everything that you're putting out there. If you're more transparent, you kind of lay out, these are the biases that I hold. These are the conflicts I might have. Then readers can decide based on that, what you're writing about. Is it trustworthy? Can I rely on it? And in some cases, you probably shouldn't write about it at all. In Kara's case, so I think there should be more of that. There should be more transparency, so readers have a more informed way of consuming all this information.
I'll take it a step further and sort of pull the curtain back on what we do. I don't mean to, but I talk all the time. Sorry. I have a byline on the site. I write at least once a week, usually more. I cover early stage startups and emerging technology, really geeky stuff. But that's interesting in that I also deal with our partnerships with companies like Twitter and Facebook. How do you do that? I mean, I tell some people that, and it's like an anathema. That's impossible. But the way that, Kara and Walt and I have worked it out, it's that, well, when I go into these meetings, I say, in this context, I'm our social media editor. I'm never going to write anything about this company. I'm not going to tell anything about this and about what we say here to other members of our staff. If there's a leak, it won't be me, and there hasn't been a problem from that. There haven't been stories that have gotten out by way of me, but it's a precarious position.
Yeah.
And occasionally there will be companies where I can't write about them because it's at some point they may come up as somebody we want to partner with, and that's just not something we do.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I have that trouble sometimes where it's like you want to write about it because you have the expertise there, but it's troubling. If you do want to do business with them, then that sort of crosses the line on the relationship.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to ask is, how exactly do you measure success, and what do you think that social media editors could be doing better?
I mean, metrics is a key part of what we do. I'm not going to pretend that they're not. We use Omniture, we use Chartbeat, we use Bitly, real-time and static numbers to see if the projects we implement are working. And if they're not working, we try something new, and nothing is going to tell us if something is working or not other than numbers. I also measure success by the number of journalists who have turned into their own little beat hubs on social. Our transportation editor is phenomenal. He's so cool, and it's cool watching them get their wings, so to speak. And the people who are sometimes against it suddenly understand when you send them out to do a live sort of breaking news thing, and they come back and they're like, I've got X number of followers, and you're like, I turned another one, and you just keep going. And so yeah, numbers reflect your success in the social realm, and then just the number of people who are getting it is my metric. So
I would echo what she said, and I think I also get more excited when the fruits of our labor is more people coming to us and wanting to get involved and learn more about how to use these social platforms. So. And, it happens all the time. Newer converts will come in and say, oh, I want to learn how to do a better job at monitoring all the news in my beat on all these social platforms. And then, I sometimes I'll do it individually. It's hard to have the bandwidth to do that. If I have time, I will. But we also have these workshops that we do semi-monthly, so we can gather up a lot of people. And we actually bring in the journalists who are already doing a great job to mentor the other ones who are just kind of getting their feet wet. So it's a collaborative effort. It can't just be me.
Yeah.
It has to be all the people in the organization who are doing it really well.
You guys are journalists. You're competitive. You like to see who's doing better than you, and you want to catch up.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
it's so
That's
true.
what we do.
The competitive nature actually helps because they'll see another journalist doing a really great job because they're out there and they're using Twitter and Facebook and all these other things. And that really motivates others to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're much the same. The only difference is because we have to sort of be very specific about what we choose to do because the staff is so small and there's only so many punches we can throw. The first question is, okay, why did we do this in the first place? What was the point of I don't know, earlier in the year we did something, I made up the name, we called it a social relaunch, and it was basically breaking out our Twitter feed. As we grew, the theory was main Twitter feed's going to get pretty crowded if it just tweets everything. It's going to become a little less useful for people who aren't total wonks. So we break it out into a bunch of different feeds. If you want to follow All Things D Mobile, you can just follow that now. You can sort of pick and choose from the various content we have. Why did we want to do that? Well, a couple of reasons. Increase in Twitter followers, increase in massive links sort of out in the Twitter sphere. That's a word, right? And
I call it the bird cage.
yeah, exactly. And increase in response from a lot of different ways. So increase in real-time response, increase in overall traffic from those vectors, and generally seeing that people thought this was a good idea. Because it was something that we definitely hadn't seen tried in this particular way, especially not packaged the way we packaged it. And that's how we ask. Did it do that? And yeah, we're like 650% up on Twitter followers since we did that, and we and Twitter traffic has gone through the roof for us, which is awesome. But because I don't have so many journalists to train, my really cool moment is when I'm at some event and somebody who is following one of our subsidiary streams tweets at me through that and says, hey, I'm really interested in this. Could you put up another picture of the Lytro camera, from the back? I didn't see that. I'd be like, yeah, I'm still here. I'll totally snap that and put it up there on Instagram or whatever. Nice. That's the kind of stuff that you can do as an individual, and I add that to the pile of sort of small successes.
Yeah, that's, for me, those engagement metrics I feel like are so key, and knowing that, you're actually working with vested readers and people who really care about your content and getting them to care more, really, engaging them for the sake of the buzzword. But, there are numbers in addition to follower counts that can prove that, things like time on site and pages per visit are really important to me. And also number of comments on our stories. I'm always watching that and trying to get that up. Just the more we can get people having conversations about our content and about our mission, the better to me.
Yeah. And I consider live blogs part of social media, and nothing really is better at increasing time on site than the live blogs, because people are completely absorbed with all the updates that we're providing for these big breaking stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're just about out of time. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you
Thanks
everyone
for having us.
for attending.
Thank you.